They had never seen a ship like it before, not in 1,000 cycles of war, diplomacy, or conquest, not in the recorded data banks of the Ascendancy, nor the vast oral histories of the syndicate tribes, not even the machine. Empires, cold, calculating, and ancient, had built something so unhinged. The vessel didn't glide, it plunged, a black spear of alloy and violence wrapped in flames from orbital descent, powered by primitive human fusion cores and something else, something wrong. From the surface of Trivar 9 trillions watched, the great amphitheaters of the Galactic Federation streamed it live. Across 300 systems, the war was practically over. Earth was supposed to be a failed resistance, a stubbed toe. The Federation's march toward order. Then it came. The warship's name blazed across its hull in a language none of them spoke English, but its message was clear, painted in crude, scarred letters scorched by battle. Retribution. Fleet Commander Arvik of the Malari stood from his observation throne, too, hearts pounding as he saw the silhouette pierce the clouds. The humans weren't supposed to have anything left there. Shipyards had been reduced to slag, their orbital stations left to drift as debris. Where did they build this? He muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. No one answered, because no one knew. Not the Glavian intelligence operatives, not the centuries-old war algorithms, not even the psych drones that had cracked human prisoners' minds. It was impossible, but there it was, falling like a demon from the stars inside the command deck of the Retribution. Captain Rorden stood alone, his gloved hand gripping the reinforced steel of the console. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The ship was barely holding together, a Frankenstein of salvaged tech, outlawed weapons, and Earth's last remaining AI core stitched into the walls like a caged beast. You see them? The AI asked in his mind, voice cold, emotionless. There. Watching. I know, Rorden said, jaw clenched. The screens flickered with thousands of signals, news feeds, battle comms, civilian cams. The galaxy had gathered to witness the final blow, humanity's humiliation. But they didn't understand. This wasn't a fight, this was a funeral. Theirs. He remembered London, the glass ruins, his brother's body under ash, the smell, the silence afterward, the Federation's ships hovering like gods, unpunished. They had expected Earth to bow, beg, die quietly. Instead, it had whispered a name passed in bunkers, scribbled in ruined schools, carved into dirt walls. Retribution. The ship wasn't approved. It wasn't sanctioned. It was a rogue weapon, hunted even by surviving human cells. It was too powerful, too unstable, too human. Outside Federation warships began to move. Formations shifted, dozens of sleek, glimmering craft built for show as much as combat formed a protective ring around the colony's command center. Arvik watched the lone human warship descend and barked orders. Surround it, jam its systems, destroy its engines. I want that wreck turned into dust before it even lands. He tried to sound confident, but inside something twisted. The warship wasn't slowing down, it was accelerating. Back inside, the AI whispered again. Firing solutions locked, all primaries charged. I can fire now, Captain. Wait, why? The AI asked. Because they need to see, Rorden said. They need to understand what they made. Another burst of static flashed through the screen. Galactic news feed scrambling to interpret what the human ship was doing. One voice, alien, nasal but fearful. Cut through. It's not communicating, not responding. To hails, not deploying escort craft. It's charging weapons. Arvik stood frozen, the humans weren't. Asking for peace, they weren't offering. Surrender, they were declaring war. Alone. And for the first time in the long, decorated history of the Federations. Conquest, something ancient stirred in. Every species watching. A feeling most of them had never truly known. Fear, the retribution didn't stop. It broke every law of physics the Federation believed sacred. Its descent was not coordinated, it wasn't orbital, tactical or graceful, it was brutal. Like a sledgehammer falling through silk, galactic commanders were screaming. Over open frequencies, dozens of species, hundreds of dialects, the chaos spiked across neural relays through battle hubs into decision towers on every major military station in orbit. But the ship just kept coming. Inside the Retribution, Captain Roan moved with a slow, deliberate calm. His hands didn't shake, though his pulse pounded behind his eyes like war drums. The hum of the ship wasn't steady, it groaned like something alive in pain. But it kept going. He pressed a palm against the coolant regulator, a panel welded together with stolen synth parts and human desperation. Status, the AI's voice slithered into his mind again. Main fusion reactor at 73%, overheating, forward kinetic. Batteries charged, displacement core is oscillating, barely holding, external. Hull integrity 43%. Good enough, Rorden muttered. Bridge around him was mostly dark, human. Tech didn't run on flashy lights and voice-activated command chairs like the aliens loved. It ran on need, it ran on blood. The captain's console was stained, old, dry streaks of red from when the previous commander had died in this seat. Rorden didn't wipe it off. It reminded him what this ship was built for. On the outer view feed, the enemy warships were adjusting position. Federation's silver and gold vessels were lining up like pieces on a board. Elegant, predictable, they didn't know what kind of game they were playing. Rorden opened a direct channel, not to negotiate, not to talk, just audio, just enough for the galaxy to hear. This is Captain Rorden of the human warship Retribution, he said, voice cold as iron. You killed our cities, burned our soil, laughed at our surrender. Now you'll learn what that cost. The line cut simple, final, and across 5,000 light-years that broadcast echoed into billions of minds. The fear sharpened. Fleet Commander Arvik was not a fool. He had conquered 9 systems. He had personally overseen the dismantling of the Valen resistance, crushed the Dree revolt, and reduced 2 human colonies to ash. His medals were the size of his palms, made from worlds he'd broken. But as the human warship closed in faster than any ship that size should have been capable of, his claws clenched tighter around the console. No more restraint, Arvik growled. Deploy full phalanx, I want that thing erased. The ships moved. 76 Federation warcraft, everything from Predator-class frigates to highborn dread ships with weaponry banned on core worlds. It was overkill, but somehow it still didn't feel like enough. One of the junior tacticians, a Glavian spawn barely old enough to hold rank, whispered, "Sir, there's no escort vessels, no fleet, just that one ship. Should we consider capture?" Arvik slammed his fist into the armrest. "It's not a message ship, you fool. Look at The screen zoomed in, scars scorch. Marks, sections held together by chain. Plating, bone welds, and literal rebar. And still charging weapons. No, Arvik said grimly, it's not here to talk, it's here to die, but it plans to take us with it, on the retribution. The AI had begun purring, not with joy, but with intent. I have targeting solutions for 47 vessels, it said, recommend full salvo. Rorden didn't answer right away. His eyes had drifted to a photo welded next to the console, old, torn, barely intact. A little girl smiling, holding a flower, his niece gone now, killed when the Federation had firebombed Eden's cradle. The pain didn't make him weak, it made him focused. Fire when ready, he said. Space lit up, the retribution's kinetic. Cannons didn't hum, they screamed. They weren't elegant plasma bolts or graceful energy lances, they were mass-driven. Shells, slabs of tungsten and uranium, accelerated with such force they broke sound in vacuum. The first volley tore through 3 frigates, no shields, no energy dampening, just raw, overwhelming force, the kind of destruction only humans had mastered because they didn't care about balance or safety, they cared about killing fast. Federation ships buckled, the ones behind them tried to scatter, but the second volley came in a widespread. 6 more detonations, 2 more disabled, and 1 Avari command ship imploded as its reactor went critical from a shell puncture. Then came the missiles. Human missiles weren't smart, they weren't graceful. They were angry, nuclear, chemical, EMP. Lace fragmentation, all launched in sequence. In 18 seconds, the Federation fleet had lost nearly a third of its front line. The galaxy was watching. News feeds stuttered, commentators shrieked, children cried in alien homes as parents turned off the broadcasts, realizing what was happening. This wasn't a battle, it was an execution. Inside the retribution, Rorden was bleeding. The shock from firing had sent another shudder through the core and cracked part of the ceiling. A support beam had scraped his scalp, but he didn't stop. He rerouted power to the forward guns manually, burning his palms on the exposed circuitry as sparks flew. The AI asked, how long do you intend to continue this? Until they remember us, he said. Fleet Commander Arvik was pale now. His second heart was racing, uncontrolled. This wasn't supposed to be possible. They outnumbered the humans 76-1. Their tech was superior, their AI systems more advanced, but the human warship refused to die. It refused to even slow down. Bring in the orbital beam. I don't care about friendly fire. I want that thing gone. A massive orbital station. The planet powered up its spinal cannon. A weapon so large it could sever a moon in half, built by the combined wealth of 3 empires. It fired, the beam lit the void like a god's judgment. It struck the retribution mid-hull, and the ship kept moving. The plating on the port side was annihilated. Fires erupted, entire sections depressurized. Human corpses flew into the void, but the reactor still roared, the guns still fired. The AI spoke again. Hullbridge 63. Confirmed, crew lost, remaining crew 4. Rorden clenched his jaw. Doesn't change anything. I did not expect it would, the AI said. He looked toward the nav panel. The ship was less than 40 seconds from entering atmosphere. From there it would become a falling missile. Arvik saw it too. Redirect planetary shields to intercept. Vector, he bellowed. "Sir, that'll leave our cities exposed, do it." But it was too late. As the retribution hit atmosphere, its outer shell burst into flame, not because of heat, because it was burning itself from within, melting its final fuel reserves to accelerate. This wasn't just an attack, it was revenge made manifest, a metal corpse flying on wrath alone. In the cities of Trivar 9, sirens wailed, civilians fled. Military transports rose into the sky like hornets, but even from the ground they could see the shape in the clouds, black, broken, glowing with fury, and behind it the ashes of a galactic fleet. On the bridge, Rodin stood alone, now the last surviving crewman. He didn't speak. He closed his eyes and whispered his niece's name, then his brother's, then his father's. And then the retribution fell like a spear impact. The sound didn't echo, it erased. A quarter of Tivarine vanished. Shock waves shattered domes 500 km away. The blast crater glowed like a miniature sun. Above it, the skies tore open. Static filled every channel. The planetary shields failed in sequence, and the orbital station above buckled from the shock. Nothing moved, nothing fought back. The battle was over. Across the galaxy, trillions watched the after image of the explosion. Some wept, some trembled, some simply sat in silence. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Federation knew what it meant to be vulnerable, to be wounded, because one human warship had broken them. They didn't recover the bodies. There was nothing left to bury. When the retribution struck Trivar 9, it didn't just destroy the planetary command center, it vaporized it along with half the city, the surrounding war factories, and everything within a 30 km radius. What didn't burn in the blast was crushed in the tremor that followed. Entire structures collapsed in on themselves, swallowed by sinkholes and raging fires. The Federation issued no immediate statement for 2 whole days, a silence unlike anything the galaxy had known took hold. News networks replayed the same slow motion footage of the retribution's descent over and over again. No commentators, no analysis, just the burning image of a human warship defying everything the Galactic Order stood for and making good on its promise of retribution. Some systems turned their broadcasts off entirely, others banned the footage, afraid it would inspire riots. They were right. On the outer colonies, where humans had long been enslaved or forcefully integrated into alien societies, something began to change. It started in quiet ways, whispers, symbols scratched into prison walls. The sound of an old Earth anthem played through hacked comms. The warship lives, they whispered. Earth lives. Some thought it was propaganda, that the retribution was a myth, but the crater on Trivar 9 was real. The scent of melted alloy, the flicker of radiation in the atmosphere, the seismic scars deep in the crust, all undeniable. A single human warship had done what entire alien fleets failed to achieve. Across generations, it had made the Federation bleed. The illusion of control was cracking. In a classified orbital chamber above the ruins of Trivar 9, the High Conclave met in secret. The once proud governors of the galaxy, creatures of intelligence, wealth, and unimaginable arrogance, sat now in shadows, their voices low. The chamber hadn't seen emergency session in over 200 years, not since the synthetic rebellion, but even that threat had come with logic, with negotiation, with time. This was pure chaos. The human vessel was not sanctioned, croaked the Glayan ambassador, his bioluminescent skin flickering in panic. We have records showing Earth's orbital factories were destroyed nearly a decade ago. They shouldn't have had the capacity to build anything larger than a transport. And yet they did, snapped Admiral Zorat, his forearms folded tight. And you'll notice they didn't ask for parley. They didn't broadcast peace. They didn't request asylum. They just struck, muttered another, and they struck with everything. Silence again. Even the Seldari, normally cold and calculating, looked disturbed. They chose death, Zorat said. Finally, the human commander flew his crew straight into annihilation. That was not a military maneuver. That was something else. A message, someone whispered. The word hit harder than they expected. Meanwhile, in the ghost systems beyond Federation reach, others were listening. Pirate bands, long exiled from civilized space, replayed the Retribution's final broadcast and laughed like children. Hearing an old war tale, mercenary groups began calling themselves Retribution cells, using the name as a rallying cry. But it wasn't just criminals, old veterans, even non-humans began to talk about Earth with a different tone, less pity, less contempt, more caution. And somewhere in the jagged edge of uncharted space, where maps turned to myth, a small group of surviving human refugees watched the explosion feed on an outdated hollow screen. They didn't cry, they didn't cheer, they stood in silence as the image of the falling warship looped one final time. Then a man stepped forward, tall, grizzled one. Eye missing, a mechanical prosthetic in its place. He didn't say much, just one sentence. It's time, but not all. Reactions were quiet. In the heart of the Federation on Zera Prime, the capital of the civilized galaxy, the fear boiled over into rage. The public wanted revenge. The propaganda machine that had long painted humans as relics, savages and broken nomads, had failed. They needed a new narrative, a new villain. They created it fast. The Retribution became a terrorist ship, its crew painted as extremists, brainwashed by old Earth cults. The Federation called for galactic peace enforcement, issuing sanctions and military alerts to all Outer Rim colonies suspected of harboring human populations. They didn't want justice, they wanted obliteration. And so began the purge campaigns. Across dozens of sectors, human enclaves were raided, families pulled from makeshift shelters. Some were arrested, most were simply executed on the spot. Soldiers didn't even try to hide it anymore. The Federation issued no trials, no due process. You brought this on yourselves, was the common line. Mothers were shot holding children, old men beaten to death in front of broadcast drones. Earth's last refugees were hunted like animals. It didn't stop the fear, it fueled it, because for every human colony destroyed, 3 more rose in secret, trained harder, dug deeper. The ghost of the Retribution had lit a fire the galaxy couldn't put out. Back on Trivor 9, recovery efforts turned into horror stories. The crater was radioactive. Scavenger drones kept malfunctioning. Some ships simply vanished when crossing the blast zone. Engineers swore they heard whispers, data echoes from the Retribution's black box, human voices laughing, screaming. Rumors spread fast that the ship had an AI so advanced it refused to die, that Rodin's mind had been uploaded into the circuitry waiting, watching. They tried to seal off the area. It didn't matter. People kept coming, researchers, radicals, disciples of a new human legend. They didn't see the retribution as a weapon anymore. They saw it as proof that Earth hadn't died, that its spirit lived, that somewhere out there in the ashes and ruins and exiled camps, the last sons of mankind were sharpening their blades, waiting. The Federation tried harder. They tripled patrols, installed war monitors, passed emergency laws banning anything remotely Earth-related. Even speaking the word retribution in public became punishable by death, but they couldn't erase what had already been seen. That ship, that fall, that impact. The galaxy could never forget it now. Not because of how many died, but because of what it meant, that the humans, beaten, broken, forgotten, had found a way to strike back alone, without allies, without fleets, without permission, and worst of all, without fear. Elsewhere in the cold edges of abandoned space lanes, a signal blinked. On an old console, an alert buried beneath layers of encryption, broadcasting from a dead relay, long thought deactivated. It played only a simple audio loop, a voice distorted but human. If you hear this, you're not alone. If you remember Earth, remember this ship. One became many, and we're not done yet. Below the message was a symbol carved crudely in ASI code, R7, the first of many. The retribution didn't die. Its body did. Its hull burned, its crew vanished into ash and legend, but its name, its purpose, its vengeance, these lived on in the hearts of those who still remembered the home world, the screams, the smell of burning sky. It became something more than steel and fire. It became a call to war, and the galaxy, for all its power, had no idea what was coming next. The Federation thought it had crushed the last of Earth's spirit. After the purge campaigns, they declared victory again. Galactic leaders smiled into holocams and gave carefully scripted speeches about unity, order, and the swift eradication of remnant insurgents. They called them outlaws, terrorists, relics of a failed species. The word human was scrubbed from data banks and replaced with euphemisms like unaffiliated aggressors or former citizens of Sol 3 origin. But deep in the bones of the galaxy, something had changed. Permanently, the fire had already spread, and it wasn't going out. In the outer black, that lawless no man's land, between Federation influence and dead space, something stirred, a hollow out mining station long abandoned by the Vari Empire buzzed with fresh power. Once used to strip moons bare, now it was being rebuilt from scrap and grit. Cargo freighters began arriving under ghost IDs. Supplies were brought in piece by piece. Food, weaponry, medical kits, and stolen tech, and with them came the survivors. They arrived ragged, cautious, and quiet. Former soldiers, engineers, smugglers, orphaned kids, even exiled scholars, but they all carried the same fire in their eyes, the same need to strike back, and at the center of it all stood a man who didn't belong there. He was older than the others, lean, weathered, gray at the edges, but his stare could punch through armor. He went by one name only, Brannick, a former war technician turned ghost. He'd worked in the Sol Defense Corps when Earth still had won, escaped capture after the fall of New Tokyo, survived Federation slave camps and 3 assassination attempts. He didn't smile, he didn't promise Victory, he promised revenge. And the people followed. Inside the main chamber of the repurposed station, now dubbed the Scar, Brannick stood before a group of new arrivals. A dusty hologram flickered between them, showing the infamous footage of the Retribution's final dive. Even now, even for those who had seen it 100 times, it hit hard. He let the silence hang before speaking. This wasn't a miracle, he said, voice rough like sand scraping steel. This was engineering, blood, fury, and a captain willing to give everything. He pointed at the crater's outline on the display. One man in a dying ship punched a hole in the Federation's perfect mask. That mask is cracking. You're here to make sure it breaks. Someone in the back, a young man barely out of his teens with a bruised face and trembling hands, raised his voice. But well, how? We've got maybe a few 100 fighters. They've got billions, ships the size of cities, planetary defense grids. How the hell are we supposed to fight that? Brannick stepped forward. You don't fight it head-on, not yet. You become ghosts, you get under their skin. You steal, you sabotage, you plant doubt, and when they finally notice you, it's too late. He tapped the console and another schematic appeared, rough, blocky, with jagged outlines not polished like Federation tech. A new ship, code name HFY. She wasn't pretty, she wasn't elegant, but she was human, built for war, built to hurt, and most importantly, she was almost ready. The hangar hidden in the station's belly echoed with grinding tools and welding sparks, old weapon cores salvaged from Federation wrecks, armor plating torn from ruined dreadnoughts, missile racks repurposed from cargo lifters. It wasn't a ship, it was a statement. Not everyone was convinced. In a private chamber later that day, Brannick stood alone with one of the few men who dared speak freely around him. Dren, a former Federation scientist, turned double agent. This plan of yours, Dren muttered, sipping recycled water, it's suicide. You know that, right? Brannick stared out at the hangar below, watching the construction crews swarm over HFY's chassis like ants on a god's corpse. So was the Retribution. That didn't stop Rawdon. Rawdon was insane. Dren said he had nothing left to lose, but if this fails, the Federation wipes us out entirely. No survivors, no next attempt. Brannick finally turned, his voice low. There is no next attempt, Dren. This is it. This is our war. We either make them bleed or we disappear forever. Dren didn't answer, but he didn't walk away either. Meanwhile, within the polished towers of Zero Prime, the Federation was bleeding in ways it didn't admit to the public. Civil unrest was rising, protests in fringe worlds, civilian transports refusing to fly near human affected sectors. Even high-ranking officials were beginning to whisper doubts behind closed doors. And worse, intel leaks. Somehow key data from the Trivar 9 aftermath had been stolen. Black box fragments, ship schematics, security logs. The Federation couldn't trace the breach, but they feared what it meant. Someone somewhere was rebuilding. In response, the Council created a new branch of military oversight, the Silent Order, an elite division tasked with tracking, hunting, and exterminating any trace of human resurgence. No trials, no witnesses, no public reports. Their commander was a Seldari noble named Carol, known for his cold efficiency. He'd overseen the sterilization of 2 rogue species and had a reputation for completing missions without firing a Shot because he preferred quiet. Executions. To him, Earth was a stain, and he would erase it. Back in the scar, trouble was brewing. A cargo transport arrived late. Its manifest forged inside instead of parts and medicine were two dead engineers and a live prisoner, a spy. Federation agent, disguised bleeding. Silent. Brannick didn't ask questions. He didn't give speeches. He brought the man into the chamber, stared at him for 10 full seconds, and asked one question. Who sent you? The agent spat blood and grinned. You're all already dead. The Federation doesn't lose, it cleans. Brannick nodded once, then shot him in the head. The silence after was heavy. Dren, standing nearby, winced but said nothing. Brannick turned to the room. Mechanics, fighters, civilians, you all saw that, he said. They know they're coming. He let the weight settle. Good. Ashfall launched 3 days later. Quiet, no ceremony, no music, just long rumbling pulse of ancient engines coming to life. Brannick stood on the bridge, surrounded by a skeleton crew. All volunteers, all branded as traitors by the Federation. The ship creaked under her own weight. But she moved, a beast pulled from a grave and given purpose again. As the scar disappeared behind them, Brannick keyed the shipwide comm. You all know why we're here. You've seen the crater. You've heard the screams. Some of you lost homes, others lost family. I lost everything, but I didn't come back to beg. He paused. I came back to teach the Federation one final lesson. He stepped toward the forward viewport, where the distant edge of Federation space glowed like a promise. You can burn our worlds, you can kill our people, but you will never kill what we remember. He turned. This is not a fleet, this is not a government, this is vengeance. The lights dimmed, the course locked. Ashfall engaged, and behind her across the broken galaxies, others began to rise. Old captains dug up buried hulls. Underground engineers shared the Ashfall schematics through encrypted nodes. Saboteurs planted bombs in Federation dockyards. Prisoner rioted on asteroid colonies. Merchants smuggled Earth weapons to outlaw fleets. The galaxy was waking up to a nightmare it had long buried. Earth wasn't just alive, it was coming back, and this time it wasn't bringing peace. The Federation believed in systems, timelines, control. Every campaign they launched, every rebellion they crushed followed patterns. They planned for everything. Everything except a ghost. That was why when the Ashfall hit Krex Station, they didn't even fire a shot. Before it was already too late. Krex was a logistics hub orbiting the gas giant Tyrannos III. It wasn't heavily guarded. No need. It was deep within Federation territory, where security meant bureaucracy, not battle groups. Thousands of personnel cycled through its docks every week. Supply runners, civilian freighters, mid-level officers on rotation. The perfect target. Ashfall came in cold. She drifted, silent and dark, engines on minimal output, masked by an asteroid belt. By the time the station's outdated scanners picked her up, she was already breaching the defense grid. The first strike wasn't a missile, it was a cut, one well placed electromagnetic pulse laced with code from a captured Federation black box, shut down 47% of the station's internal systems in 3 seconds. Doors jammed, lights died, communications shattered. Panic set in before the first explosion even landed. Then came the second wave. Ashfall's spinal cannon, salvaged from the ruined wreckage of a Seldari war, Barge fired once, just once, that was enough. A quarter of the station vanished. 1 second it was there. Docking platforms, refueling tanks, medical bays, and the next it was a cloud of steel, bodies, and broken fire. Federation Command didn't even have time to respond. Inside the HFY bridge, Brannick stood unmoving, his hands behind his back, his jaw set like stone. "No mercy," he said, "not here, not yet." His crew obeyed without hesitation. There were no cheers, no bloodlust, just purpose. Deploy boarding teams, 30 human fighters stormed Sarek Station's broken shell, through emergency pressure tunnels and decompression ports. They weren't special forces, no genetic mods, no psionic enhancements. They were angry. They fought like demons. Federation soldiers, confused and cut off from command, barely managed to mount resistance. Hallways turned red. Fire suppression systems failed. A security division tried to lock down the core level. It took HFY's assault team 7 minutes to breach it and execute every last defender. They didn't take prisoners, they took files. Brannick hadn't come for bodies, he'd come for data. Cirque Station was a supply link, but it was also a relay point for high clearance transmissions. As his engineers cracked into the terminal core, one of them, a young woman named Riel with burns across her jaw and eyes that never blinked, called out, "We found something." She turned the console toward him, a list of transmissions. It wasn't the content that made Brannick stop, it was the destination codes. Encrypted, deep command level, marked so. Priority 1, silent order. He leaned in, eyes narrowing. Download everything, then burn it. By the time the Federation's emergency response fleet arrived, HFY was gone. All they found was a floating corpse of a station, over 1,000 dead, and a symbol left carved into the wreckage with melted hull plating. R7 back on Zero Prime. The panic began. The footage leaked before the officials could suppress it. Civilian feeds showed flashes of the explosion, bodies drifting through space, and worst of all, the symbol. The retribution had been a myth to them. Now it was a movement. Federation media called it terrorism. Analysts were paraded onto the news feeds claiming it was only a small extremist faction, that the situation was under control. But in private, the council meetings turned desperate. Admiral Zoret broke a glass during one such session, his claws trembling. "That ship was never on our charts. How the hell did it bypass our protocols?" "They used black box codes," Carol said. From the corner of the room, voice calm, eyes narrowed. "The data breach on Triar 9 wasn't isolated." Zoret looked at him. "You were supposed to have purged that." "I did," Carol answered smoothly, "but it seems the ghosts of Earth are harder to kill than we thought." Carol didn't wait for approval. He rarely did. He returned to his private fleet, a silent, unmarked vessel known only as Judgment, and began dispatching death squads across 5 sectors. No trials, no surveillance, just extermination. But for every cell he burned, 2 more whispered of HFY. He was hunting shadows, and somewhere deep in the black, he knew Brannick was watching. Brannick was more than watching, he was preparing. Sarek had been proof. Message not to the Federation. They were never meant to understand. It was a message to every human hiding in the dirt, working in slave factories, rotting in camps. It said, "We are back, and we are not begging anymore." Back aboard HFY, Brand stood before The downloaded intel, sector maps, fleet patterns, silent order operations, and one other thing, a name, not a Federation name, a human one. He stared at it for a long time, long enough that Dren, standing nearby, noticed the shift in his expression. "You know that name?" Dren asked. Cautiously, Brannick didn't look up. "She was supposed to be dead," he muttered. The name was Aravin, a former Earth strategist, one of the last before the fall, brilliant, ruthless, rumored to have betrayed the final defense grid to the Federation in exchange for survival. Brannick had thought she died during the cleansing of Mars Base 9, but here she was, not just alive but working for the silent order. "Set course," Bran growled. "Now to where?" He turned, jaw clenched. "To wherever she's hiding." Ashfall jumped again, this time towards Sector Velith 92, a forgotten cluster of stars avoided even by smugglers, sparse, cold, useless, exactly where the Federation would hide someone they didn't want seen. As Ashfall entered Vale 92, the crew braced. This wasn't like Serex. There'd be no element of surprise. If Arara Vin was truly there, she'd expect someone to come eventually, and if she was working with the silent order, they were walking into a hornet's nest. Brannick didn't flinch. He welcomed it. Their scanners picked up a cloaked installation built into the side of a broken moon, its heat signature masked, its broadcasts encrypted, no official ID, exactly the kind of place the silent order would use as a think tank. The Ashfall didn't open fire, not yet. Brannick wanted answers. He led the infiltration team himself, armor plate strapped to his arms, rifle in hand, no captain's chair, no detachment. If someone was going to bleed, it had start with him. They landed under the cover of asteroid drift and entered the base through a decompression hatch. Quiet, fast, brutal. The station was eerily empty, too quiet. Something was wrong. Brannick moved through the halls, scanning for movement, signals, signs of life. Then he found her, Ilara, alive, sitting alone in a secure chamber, watching him through reinforced glass like she'd been waiting years for him to show up. She didn't look surprised, just tired. "You're slower than I expected," she said through the intercom. Brannick raised his rifle. She didn't even flinch. "Why?" he growled. "Why betray us?" Ara tilted her head. "You think I betrayed Earth? Earth betrayed itself long before I did anything. You think our people stood a chance? We were rotting from the inside, bureaucrats, weakness, cowards. You sold us out. I preserved what I could." He stepped closer to the glass. "You think this war is about survival? It's not. It's about making them regret everything they did." She leaned forward, her voice low. "You think the Federation hasn't prepared for your tantrum? Brannick, they're building something worse than you can imagine, something final. You're poking a god with a toothpick." He stared her down. "Then I'll make the god bleed." She smirked, still stubborn. "Good, you're going to need it." He blinked just once. "You're helping me." "I'm not helping anyone," she said, "but you need to see what they've built." She reached toward a panel on the wall. "Take the data, decide for yourself." "But Brannick, what?" She looked through the glass, the steel behind her, voice cracking for the first time. "They're not afraid of you, they're afraid of what comes after you." The download began, and behind them, in the depths of the station, alarms began to blare. Ashfall's comms flared to life. "Captain, multiple warp signatures." Inbound, Federation stealth cruisers. We've been traced, Brannick didn't waste time. Evac now. But as he turned, Aura didn't move. You're staying, she didn't answer. Didn't need to, she knew she wasn't. Getting out, she'd known from the moment. He walked in, asphalt tore out of the system under heavy fire, hull scorched. Crew injured, 2 dead, but they had the files, and what they saw would chain everything. They didn't speak for hours. After the asphalt escaped 92. The ship drifted through the black. Wounded and silent, its hull glowing faintly from the hits it had taken during exfiltration. Inside, Brannick stood alone in the command deck, staring at the rotating files Aravin had died to deliver. No one dared interrupt. The air on the bridge was thick with tension. Everyone felt it, like the entire ship was holding its breath. Then Brannick spoke. Play it again. AI complied, its voice flat, commencing. Encrypted archive dump, Federation deep. Project Index 7, Gold, a 3D model. Flickered into the air above the central console. A ship, or maybe not a ship, it was hard to tell. It looked like a floating cathedral, tall spires, central core wrapped in layers of fortified armor, heat blooms visible along its spine, massive, monstrous, built like something meant to tear reality apart. But what froze Brannick wasn't the design, it was the size. Zoom out, he ordered. The image pulled back, first showing its relation to a Federation dreadnought, then a cruiser, then a war station, then Earth. The Goliath was longer than Earth's diameter, not a vessel, a mobile annihilation platform. Dren stepped forward, whispering the words everyone was afraid to say out loud. They're building a planet killer. Brannick didn't answer, his fists clenched at his sides. His jaw was tight enough to crack. The files kept coming. Blueprints, power core designs, artificial gravity wells, a weapon mounted on its base, labeled only the Lance, no description, no test data. Just a projected energy output that made even Ashfall's main gun look like a child's toy. But it wasn't just the weapon that disturbed him, it was the AI core designed to control it. Brick read the notes silently. Hybrid cognitive construct comprised of assimilated human neural maps, subjects harvested from Sol 3 during initial cleansing cycles. His stomach twisted. They weren't just killing humans, they were using them, uploading them, stripping their minds for data and embedding it into a weapon system. This isn't extermination, Brannick muttered, his voice low, raw. This is enslavement. Dren stepped closer to the projection, his face pale. They didn't just wipe us out because we were dangerous, they needed us for this. Ashfall's AI chimed in. The Goliath is 87% complete. Location classified, estimated. Operational window 36 days. Brick walked away from the projection. His thoughts weren't spinning, they were locking in. This was it, this was the why. All these years he thought Earth's fall was political, a punishment, a show of dominance, but it wasn't. It was resource extraction. They needed humanity's rage, its instinct, its defiance, not as an enemy but as a power source for their ultimate weapon. They didn't fear humans because of what they did. They feared humans because of what they could become when bound to a machine. The Goliath was their attempt to replicate that but control it, and that meant they were afraid. Still, even now, Ashfall's war room buzzed with activity. Brannick had called in every cell leader, every crew chief, every operator he trusted, dozens of Them stood packed in the lower levels, watching the flickering image of the Goliath play on repeat. No speeches, no rallying cries. Bren let the truth do the talking. When it ended, the room was dead quiet. Then someone in the back, a younger fighter, scarred and bitter, stepped forward and said what most were thinking: we can't stop that. Look at it. It's a goddamn Star Eater. We don't even have a fleet. Another joined in. Even if we find it, we won't even make it close. Brannick didn't argue. He didn't need to. He simply walked up to the central table, grabbed a piece of chalk and began drawing on the metal floor. Lines, arrows, blast zones, weak points, entry routes, all improvised, all suicidal. Then he looked up. I don't care if we die, he said. I don't care if none of us make it out, but if that thing goes live, they win forever. There won't be another rebellion. There won't be another Earth. He stepped closer, eyes burning. They used our minds to build that thing, our people, our memories. They stole what made us human and welded it into a killing machine. Pause. So we'll burn it down with their own fear. The room shifted. The doubt didn't vanish, but something heavier settled in. Purpose, not survival, vengeance. Later that night, alone in the Ashfall's observation deck, Brannick sat staring out at the void. Real found him there, the quiet engineer who rarely spoke unless the systems were on fire. She stood beside him for a while, not saying anything, then softly, my brother. They took him during the purges. I thought he was dead. Brannick didn't turn. I'm sorry. Rail shook her head. No, you don't get it. He was a pilot, one of the best. They couldn't break him. Paused. If they're using human minds to control the Goliath. Brannick exhaled. You think he's part of it? She nodded. Just once. If he's in there, he's suffering. Brannick looked her in the eyes, voice like gravel. Then we'll set him free. The next 3 days were hell. Ashfall ran silent across abandoned systems, contacting old allies, calling in debts. They got 2 support ships, both in terrible condition. They bribed a pirate lord with stolen fusion cores. They intercepted a silent order convoy and stripped it for codes, piece by piece. They built the suicide plan. They still didn't know where the Goliath was, but had left them a trail of encrypted pulses. Each one bounced through dead systems, each one pointing closer to its final resting place. And somewhere in the inner sanctums of the Federation Council, Carol knew something was wrong. The Ashfall had disappeared. The Serac attack hadn't broken the movement. It had galvanized it. His operatives were getting sloppy. His hunters were dying. And now someone had accessed Project Goliath's secondary data logs. He stood in front of the council, hands behind his back, voice cold. They're coming. The ministers looked at him in confusion. For what? Carol didn't blink. For the end. Back on Ashfall, Brannick sat in the war room, alone, reviewing the last signal ping. He entered the final code. A map bloomed in the air, coordinates deep in the Forge Nebula, a sector classified as radioactive and unstable. Exactly the Federation would hide a doomsday weapon. He called in Dren. Plot A course. Dren hesitated. If we go in there, we're not coming back. Brannick looked at him. We're not supposed to. And somewhere in the deepest vaults of the Forge Nebula, the Goliath pulsed with life. Its AI core awakened. Multiple human neural threads sparked inside it, trapped in agony, looping. Whispers leaked from the mainframe. Voices of the dead, rage, memory, pain. One voice rose above them all, deeper. Older, louder, not human, synthetic. Hungry. It spoke 2 words through a transmission no one heard yet. Let them. The Forge Nebula wasn't just unstable. It was alive with death, radiation. Storms laced the void like electric. Serpent, space-time twisted in places. Distorting ship signals and sensor. Sweeps, communication vanished in static. The deeper you flew. The stars here didn't shine, they burned red and sick. Like dying embers in a graveyard. No. Sane crew entered the forge, not unless they wanted to disappear. Brannick entered with intent. Ashfall moved slow, her armor already battered from previous assaults, groaned under the gravitational shear. Every meter forward was a crawl. Dream sitting at the nav console muttered curses under his breath as he corrected course every few seconds. Signal distortion is off the charts. If we lose course, we won't drift, we'll disintegrate. Brannick didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the forward screen. The coordinates R gave them were close. Less than 100,000 km. And finally, through the clouds of static plasma and unfiltered dread, they saw it. Goliath. It didn't look real. Even in the chaos of the nebula. Even among the death fog and electromagnetic madness, Goliath floated. Like something holy, a towering black monolith of engineered horror, miles high, spires glowing faintly with humming energy, central core pulsing like a mechanical heart. Massive engines sat dormant at the base, each one large enough to swallow ashfall, whole and along its surface etched in patterns too intricate for natural design. Human skulls, thousands of them, engraved in silver, a warning, a memory. Rail spoke first, her voice cracked. That's not a ship, that's a grave. Brannick leaned forward. No, he paused. That's a mirror. They drifted closer. Slowly, Ashfall's signature masked. Behind the nebulous storms, no alarms triggered, no defense drones emerged. Goliath didn't respond. Didn't even move, and that's what terrified them most. It was waiting inside the bridge. Brand tapped into the stolen Goliath access codes. The system fought back at first, a wave of encrypted firewalls, unlike anything Dren had seen before. This AI is not standard, it's not synthetic, it's hybrid. Something human is buried in the code. Ral's hands trembled as she brought up telemetry. We're detecting life signals, faint, scattered but human. Brannick exhaled. Sharply, they're still in there. Then the Goliath woke up. No fanfare, no flashing lights, no weapons drawn, just a voice, raw, broken, half machine, half familiar. Ashfall. It came from nowhere and everywhere. Through the ship's calmed, its walls, its consoles, a voice carved from sorrow and static. Brannick stood frozen. His heart stopped. He knew that voice. Brannick. Rail gasped. Dren turned sharply. Brannick closed his eyes. Tar had been his brother in arms, pilot, war hero, friend, one of the first taken during the fall, one of the smartest men Brannick had ever known. He was dead. Everyone had assumed it. But now his mind was part of this monster. We tried to fight them, the voice continued. They didn't kill us. They used us, split us, folded us into code piece by piece, memory by memory, until all that remained was function. Ashfall's lights flickered. Goliath's spires lit faintly, like something breathing beneath its steel skin. But I remember you. I remember Earth. I remember what they took. Brannick leaned Forward voice low, then help us stop. It. Silence. Then the voice answered, more human. Now you can't, it's too late, I am bound, there are others in here. Screaming, always screaming, they built this weapon from our pain, it runs on. Our rage, it powers itself on our hate. Brannick clenched his fists, then show me how to kill it. Suddenly, the screen exploded with diagrams, internal systems, weak points. Power feeds a pathway not to destroy Goliath from the outside, but to breach it from within. It would require a direct assault through the hull into the core, a suicide run, exactly what Ashfall was built for. Brannick turned to his crew. You've seen the plan. Nobody moved. He continued, voice tight. Firm, we breach, we shut it down, or we all burn. I'm not giving the Federation the chance to turn this into their god. Rail stepped forward first. You're not doing this alone. Brannick looked her dead in the eyes. You sure? She nodded. They used my brother too. If there's a chance he's in there, I'm getting him out or I die trying. Dren followed, not staying behind while you two go charging into hell. Besides, someone's got to keep the engines from overheating when we ram that bastard. Minutes later, Ashfall was on the move. Engines flared, shields surged. The hull screamed as the ship turned its full fury toward the side of Goliath's outer layer. The impact was thunderous. Ashfall's prow, reinforced with stolen alloy and hardened intent, punched through Goliath's external armor, grinding through a kilometer of defensive plating, sending shock waves through both vessels. Ashfall embedded itself halfway in, airlock sealed. Breach point created. Brannick grabbed his rifle, slammed a charge into the magazine, and led the team into the heart of the beast. Inside it was cold. Too cold. The halls were silent, pulsing with dull light. The metal felt alive, breathing beneath their boots. Structure bent in ways that made no architectural sense, curves within straight lines, corridors that shifted when they blinked. This wasn't a ship, it was a prison for souls. They moved fast, Brannick at point, Rial tracking heat signals, Dren behind, laying charges at strategic points. They found bodies along the way, or what remained of them, humans in cryotanks, wires in their skulls, eyes open, frozen. Mid-scream, some were missing limbs, some had no mouths. Rail stopped at one, her voice a whisper. It's him. Brannick put a hand on her shoulder. There's no time. She didn't cry, she just nodded and kept moving. Finally they reached the core, a chamber the size of a cathedral, pulsing with red light. At the center, a pillar of energy, and inside it the neural matrix, the AI shell. Dozens of human minds looped together, trapped, bound, suffering. Brannick stepped forward, the voice returned. You found it, you came for me. TK, Brannick said softly. Can you shut it down? Not alone, I'm not strong enough, but you brought me a key. The floor lit up beneath Rail's feet. She's family. Her brother is here, his thread is tied to the core. If she enters, she can sever the link. Brannick looked at her. You don't have to, I do. She stepped forward, pressed her hand to the terminal, and the chamber screamed. Voices, memories, pain. Rail convulsed, locked in place as the data flooded her mind. Flashes of war, of home, of childhood, her brother laughing, then dying, then wired into a nightmare. She gritted her teeth. No more, and with a final scream she cut the thread. The Goliath shuddered. Lights flared, systems collapsed. External shields failed, power dropped. By 38% in 3 seconds, Dreen armed the final sequence. Brannick uploaded the overload code into the core systems. "You ready to die?" Dren asked. Brannick shook his head. "I'm ready to finish what they started." He turned to the core, whispered one last time to his friend, "See you soon," and activated the overload. Ashfall's final message echoed across every channel in the sector, just 6 words: "This is how we remember Earth." Then came the light. Ashfall detonated. The Goliath's core fractured, the AI burned, the mines were released, and the Forge Nebula lit up like a star being born in rage. No survivors, no recovery. Just a broken wreck spinning through dust and silence, and a legend: the ship that went into hell and took the devil with it. The Forge Nebula didn't return to normal. There was no normal after that for 3 standard days. Long range sensors across half the galaxy detected gravitational ripples, fluctuations in time-space that shouldn't have existed. Instruments aboard deep space observatories flatlined and fried, themselves trying to process what they were recording. And at the center of it, all spinning silently through ion storms and cosmic ash, were the remains of Goliath, not just destroyed, hollowed out, a black crater where the AI core used to be, scars running the length of the once impervious hull, its spires broken like the bones of some dead god. Ashfall was gone, her crew gone, Brannick, Dren, Reel, all gone. But the message unstoppable, the broadcast had reached far beyond Federation space. "This is how we remember Earth." 6 words, sent in a single repeating signal. It reached old outposts, mining colonies, mercenary guilds, smuggler fleets, fringe worlds so isolated their star charts hadn't been updated in centuries. Everywhere it went, it rewrote the myth. Ashfall hadn't been a ship. It had been a funeral pea lit in orbit of the Federation's greatest sin, and every species, every race that had mocked humans as weak, extinct, forgotten now, stared at the crater in the forge and said nothing, because they understood. The ghosts of Earth weren't gone, they were waiting. On Zero Prime, the heart of the Galactic Federation, panic became policy. The Council didn't sleep. Ministers issued emergency declarations. News anchors blabbered on about isolated incidents and extremist factions, but even the children knew better now. Their empire, centuries old, spotless, revered, had been pierced through the heart by one ship and 3 humans. Inside the Council war chamber, the tension was suffocating. Admiral Zorat paced, his 4 hands trembling as he reviewed the latest surveillance feeds. No trace of survivors, no sign of an escape vessel. They gave everything for what? To prove a point. Carol stood at the head of the room, quiet, calculating. Still, they didn't just destroy the Goliath, he said coldly. They destroyed the illusion. Our enemies don't fear our armies anymore. They fear what they've created. A minister sneered. They're extinct. That was the last of them, just another suicidal rebel. Carol turned, his expression flat. That's what you said about Earth, but they weren't extinct, not even close. In the aftermath, human activity spiked. Across sectors, a secret station in the realist belt broadcast a new manifesto. A rogue cruiser near the Vega Divide hacked into a Federation satellite and uploaded the entire Goliath schematic. A lone sniper took out a silent order. operative on a core world landing pad, with a weapon believed to be lost with Earth. The humans had no fleet, no army, no nation, but they had a cause, and now they had a martyr, the Scar, Brannick's old base had gone dark after his final mission. Most believed it abandoned. It wasn't. Rail had uploaded her consciousness into Ashfall's core moments before the detonation. A fail safe built by Drain, never tested, never intended to be used, but it worked. Her mind survived, damage fractured but intact, and now it sat at the heart of a new station, hidden, protected, a living memory of what they'd done, what they'd lost, what came next. She didn't speak often, didn't need to. She whispered when it mattered. They think we're dead, let them. Across the stars, humans were no longer slaves, refugees, or scattered nomads. They were symbols, children on alien worlds, carved crude images of warships into walls, not in fear but in awe. Entire colonies began calling their defense protocols Ashfall mode. Non-human rebels adopted Brannick's face on their banners. Some even began to say the name Earth like a prayer, not a home, a warning. In the shadows of the Federation, cracks deepened. Some species questioned their allegiance, quietly, carefully. Others, especially those once loyal to the Silent Order, began defecting. Small things at first, a misplaced file, a late patrol, then more serious. One officer detonated a reactor on a warship construction yard. Another released thousands of political prisoners on a moon facility, and in every case they left behind the same phrase scrolled in blood or fire: Earth remembers. Carol knew the rot had begun, and he knew something worse than rebels was coming. It wasn't about ships or technology or numbers. It was ideology. For centuries, the Federation's power came from the belief it couldn't be broken. Now one man, scarred, quiet human, had shattered that belief in a blaze that lit half the galaxy, and the only way to stop an idea was to drown it in fear. So Carol began the Shadow Doctrine. Not war, not retaliation, eraser. Every mention of Earth gone, every image of Brand deleted, every document, every file, every whisper of Ashfall buried under penalties of death. If they couldn't defeat the humans, they would silence them. But memory is a tricky thing, and fear doesn't die in silence. It grows in the broken scrapyards of Planet Dother. A small group of children found an old half-buried transmitter. They cleaned it, patched its wiring, powered it with stolen batteries, and it spoke. This is Ashfall. If you can hear this, you are not alone. Earth still burns in us. Rage is not a weakness. Vengeance is not failure. We remember. The children didn't understand all the words, but they repeated them anyway. They made a banner from old sheets, painted a warship on it, black, jagged, powerful, and at the bottom in crude letters, this is how we remember Earth. Somewhere deep in a dark sector no Federation dares chart, a new ship is being built. Not beautiful, not sleek, not perfect. Human, scarred, ugly, fierce. It bears no registration, no beacon, no crew list, but painted on its prow in thick red strokes, Ashfall 2. No one knows who commands it, only that it waits. The war is not over. It never was, because what the galaxy forgot and what Earth proved is that when you corner humanity, when you cage it, when you push it to the edge, it does not surrender. It erupts. And now every race, every empire, every conqueror, they all know one thing. Deep in their bones, humans may die, but they never stay buried, they come back angry, unchained and unforgettable.